No? Well, kind of maybe. I gave it a good old Rambler try, pardon my reference, and failed. You are certainly not meant to, and while I do think it's possible, I personally have failed to finish the tech tree in EU5. I do think, though, there does exist a path for it to be possible nevertheless, but before we get into that, just the usual things to quickly get out of the way. A like would be appreciated and a subscription would be amazing. 100k is a big goal, a big dream, and a journey you can help me achieve by subscribing if you haven't already, and naturally, if you're interested in grabbing EU5 or anything else in the Paradox store, please do use code Lemon Cake. It does help support the channel, but enough self-shilling, let's pop into the game. Right, quick intro today, and we're back on Scotland hopefully for the last and final time. I have certainly used the save for quite a few many videos, usually incidentally, but the main purpose of this run was twofold. I wanted to both achieve 100% literacy, and I've done a video covering that specifically. That was done, that was doable, that was actually easier than I expected. A lot of late game techs and abilities provide buffs to max literacy, so I think given the power of plus 100% monthly research speed, to be honest, I'd actually probably call for a nerf to some of the literacy providing effects. More specifically is within the last ages, if we check the age of absolutism, I think the fact that Scientific Revolution gives you plus 10 max literacy flat, and you go into press laws, where I'm not going to lie, in what universe do I not give free press for plus 10 max literacy? I guess if I'm stacking absolutism and a reduction to crown power, but plus 10 max literacy is just disgustingly strong. So I guess censored press if you want 5% and have enough, and I mean I would have enough here, it's just kind of weird. Maybe state press if you want to be crown power maxing. Still, either way, not the main point. Point is that with Scotland, the main reason I was doing this for my max text run was that in the Age of Revolutions, which is very rare, you do pick up the Scottish Enlightenment, which has an absolutely massive, or so I thought, 20% monthly research progress. And I thought, okay, I'll get this tech and I'll be max literacy. I'll be sticking with a Latin liturgical language, which means I have the maximum 0.2. Let's check our, Latin liturgical language. So if we're checking our monthly research progress, we're getting 0.2, 0.19, it stays around that point at the top. I've got my 100% average literacy. I've got the 20% from Scottish Enlightenment. I'm even a Protestant Reformed religion. I didn't realize I would be this, but I do. So I have an extra 5%. I've got all institutions, grabbed the 5% from, state interaction, and my clergy has been 100% happiness for the last 200 years. In fact, they've been so goddamn happy that the money cap, which is 1 million, my clergy has more money than that. My clergy has 1.25 million. So my clergy has currently stored more money than the government is allowed to hold, which is incredible. Not the main point. The main point was that I had a pretty ridiculous research speed, and I think 4.11 is pretty stupid. I don't think people are going to deny that if they've played the game. And even with that, I have 78 technologies left. Now, it's actually better than you think. The way that the game works is that current age technologies get more expensive, especially later on. So, for example, if we take a look at something I'm currently researching, it's costing me, 43 tech points? But if I'm researching something in the previous technologies, from the previous ages, it's going to be significantly cheaper because of the next stage reductions. In essence, meaning that something will cost 25 in the Age of Renaissance costs like 17 in the next stage afterwards. So it'd be a lot faster for me to basically clean up shop and finish these techs, but nevertheless, 78 techs left. So if you're looking at each age having like 88 advances, 100-ish advances, I've got like 1/6 of the text left with this pretty ridiculous research speed. And I mean, I've done a lot here. I haven't done any crazy modify stacking nation formation shenanigans, but I won't say the run is pretty badly here done. I mean, again, it is the funny Scotland run where this was the main point. But nevertheless, putting all of that aside, is it still possible? And I think there's a much better approach which I didn't really consider. And for that, we need to start looking at some specifics. First of all, if you were to take a look at London here, England has built the Royal Society in London. Then they've stopped providing gold for the thing to be, usable. But if you do actually keep the building operational, it's going to provide you 0.1 monthly research progress. What's amazing about the Royal Society in London is, of course, I can conquer the Royal Society in London. If I just own the Royal Society in London, I'm going to be able to use this building. It is not locked into being a Britain-specific building, so that's just something I can take over and use. A bit painful, you do have to go take over England, but the nice thing with England is that France tends to keep it nice and weak for most of the campaigns, so in current patches it shouldn't be actually that bad to do. I can suddenly do it in this run, I just didn't realize this building exists. And it's not the only source of flat research points, which will be, quite good with all the modifying stacking from literacy and everything else, because there do exist two more sources of flat research speed that are not tied to the base +1 and the 0.2 from liturgical language. And those are, of course, a random event Korea gets from these 40 dynamic historic events, which gives them 0.1 until the end of the game, and a unique special building, and I want to double check here, I might be wrong, but from my minimal understanding, and if I am wrong, I do formally apologize, but I'm about to go be outraged, a unique special building for French Vietnam. Paradox. Why have we given French Vietnam? I mean, it's fine if it's really overpowered or underpowered, but why does French Vietnam have content, right? Not Dai Viet, not Champa or the Khmer Empire. Oops, didn't mean to start a game. Why does French Vietnam have content? Who is playing as French Vietnam? Can you explain it to me? Because if you're French, you're probably playing as France. If you're Vietnamese, you're playing as Vietnam and trying to, not get colonized as one of the usual goals, right? Who is playing French Vietnam again? Like, why are we creating content for it? And if it's like, if we've released a game for 10 years and we've, in the 11th year of that game, we're trying to add content to some colonial nations, and we said, you know what, let's give some stuff to French Vietnam. That's fine. Why does French Vietnam have content, right? Like, why do they have a unique building? Why? Why do they have stuff going on? Like, surely there is pretty much anything else that you could focus on that would be seen and played by more players. Like, and I'm just going to put this out here. I don't believe, at least I'm aware of, a single person has uploaded a video on YouTube of them playing French Vietnam. I'm actually going to go out a bit further. I don't think a single person has done a campaign as French Vietnam. I don't think anyone's interacted with that. I could go test it. I think if I load in and test French Vietnam to see if that building works, I might be one of the first people to ever play French Vietnam. Why do they have things? Why do they have unique content? Okay, very specific rant, and my formal apologies. It'd be really funny if it's actually just a Vietnam building and I read the code wrong. In that case, I do formally apologize and withdraw all my complaints. But if I am right and it's a French Vietnam unique building, why? But okay, we're not here to talk about French Vietnam. We're here to talk about the possibility of getting every single tech in EU5. Of course, unless they completely rework technologies and make this absolutely possible, in which case this will be a very obsolete video. But I think Korea might be the way. So first of all, you do still get access to the 0.1 from your country events thing, and it's relatively early. One of the things that's going to be hurting Korea is the liturgical language is going to be given like +0 for absolute ages, but you can eventually upscale it and change the liturgical language and make that super prestigious by just being in Asia. Asia's very strong. But nevertheless, the second thing that hurts Korea is the fact that the early game institutions are going to be hyper painful to get. I played as Viccy, and I had a lot less tech speed than I would be getting on Korea, simply from just playing the game normally, shall we say. I wasn't even stacking literacy. And I think I was like 10 months at one point away from literally running out technologies to tech because it was so slow for me to get institutions. Korea's going to be worse. So to be able to get those institutions is going to be a big process. Now, on the actual Scotland run, I had a lot of access to, shall we say, max literacy modifiers. On Korea, it's going to be a bit harder. You still have access to the +5%, not from court poetry. There is an advance relatively at some point. I think Hangul alphabet for +5 max literacy. That's fine. So this is possible. This is great, but we are basically still behind 20% from religion. Now, if we flip Confucian, which is something we can do, or Shinto, we can get 10% from that, but we're going to struggle on that front. So I think what we're really going to have to do, and also this will help with max literacy or monthly literacy, is we're going to have to urbanize every single province so we can spam libraries everywhere. So we're going to be a rural-free environment. The reason I bring this up is that libraries have +5% max literacy as well. So if you build them in every location, you give yourself a national +5 max literacy, as well as giving you a monthly literacy ticker, which is something I actually really struggle with on Scotland specifically, right? Because the rural locations would have like a max literacy rate of 100%, but they would have a literacy rate of 70%, and it'll be taken up at 0.02, and I'm like, okay, that's terrible, it's not ticking up. The other secret thing, dare I say, for Korea that's pretty strong, is you do start with meritocracy embraced, and more importantly, you start with the meritocracy text researched, which actually means that you just have less text to research in the game. When meritocracy arrives in Europe, let's say you're playing France, right, you're going to have to research the meritocracy text. But if you start in Korea, you start with the first 3 institutions embraced and researched as opposed to the first 2. So you just have less text to tech. And you have access to the pretty insane 0.1 event modifier, which is pretty strong and obviously is going to scale really well with any percentage modifiers. So I think a Korea max text run, which involves giga urbanization, is possible, albeit probably quite painful. But I think that would be the way to approach it. To squeeze out more from Korea to do this, you would need to snake over to Europe, just because that's going to make institutions easier. So I think as Korea, what you're probably doing is, yeah, you're probably colonizing Taiwan over here. Then you're going to want to grab some outposts in Khmer for more colonial range, and do that as early as possible, and try and get to maybe Sri Lanka, any kind of other islands you can set up colonial outposts for. Get to Yemen, maybe go around Africa. It's probably cheaper and easier to go around Africa than fighting the Mamluks, because they tend to be pretty strong. But you need to get to Europe, because you also need to get to England, but not too quickly to England, because you need to let them build a Royal Society so you can take over the Royal Society to squeeze out a couple more modifiers. At the same time, in the ideal universe, France is colonizing and establishes, you guessed it, French Vietnam. And once French Vietnam is established, it should also be a building, in my understanding, for that 0.1 modifier, so you should be able to grab that. So that kind of is the extra squeezing out run, and if you're able to do that with, I'd say, 150 years, and you're able to max tech on 0.3 plus 0.2 from max categorical language, on 100% literacy with a whole bunch of percentage modifiers from institutions and everything, you could probably get there. I think it's just about doable, but it's going to be insanely painful. A nice thing with, of course, at least Korea, is that, yes, you do start as a subject of yuan, but it's a very profitable subject to be. If you take a look at the yuan economy, well, not the yuan economy, if you take a look at your own economy, you're making so much from this tribute payment system, and this is a early game source of money, so you'll be able to use that to basically kickstart your economy and start scaling very fast, very quickly. And in terms of your actual core lands over here, the population's great. Like 2.6 million isn't way over the top, but it's certainly enough, especially early on. It's a pretty healthy population pool. And if you want to expand into the region of Korea and take that over, sure, you'll have even more pops to work with. Although, do be careful. Some of the provinces up here are going to be a much more painful thing to urbanize, and ideally you do achieve that 100% urbanization. Although I say that, you know what, being like on 15k pops, yeah, you should still be able to get them eventually up to cities anyway. And you can still build towns and build libraries even on like a 7k pops province. So I'd say go for it, but be aware of your own limitations. You do want to get those libraries going as fast as possible, and anytime you conquer new people, bear in mind their literacy is going to be lower than your base population. Although, actually not always, because ironically, if we do take a look at the literacy map mode, you're a bit of a yellow compared to the early game might of Japan and China, because of Confucianism's plus 10% compared to your religion's plus 5. That does bring us to the next point, though. In terms of this religion, I don't think you should stay Eastern Buddhist unless there's some source of literacy or text speed that I'm not aware of. I think either Shinto or Confucian is the way to flip for this max run. But, and this is a crucial but, I think it's possible. I do think finishing the tech tree is possible, but it's going to be quite the achievement. Like, it's still going to have to be an innovative humanist run, in my opinion, because of the plus 5% research policy. Well, sorry, government reform that you can just get access to. That being said, you do keep sinicization, and that's good, and that's 10% research progress. I do wonder, and I need to test this, if you do find some Muslims and then use that to flip Muslim, could you keep sinicization and get legalism? Because if you do, that's going to be double dipping into an extra 10% monthly research progress. Something that requires further testing, but it's something to consider as well. Another weird tangent, but one I think is worth mentioning, is I do wonder if there's a way to manipulate your ruler traits, apart from just incessant birding, dare I say. Because keeping free thinker around is really good. Not only is it monthly progress to innovative, and you want to be max innovative ASAP, max literacy is a pretty big correlator to research speed, right? Just having free thinker around is 10% research progress. So I'm not sure if there'll be a way to manipulate that, but that would be necessary, I think. Or at least, if not necessary, a big part of it. Because the thing with free thinker traits is you can just have them, like, theoretically with 100% uptime. Anyway, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be very painful, but theoretically possible to get every single research in EU5. Now, should you get every research in EU5? No, you shouldn't. But I think it's possible, and it's probably going to be the subject of my next personal campaign as Korea. Nevertheless, I do hope you found this discussion interesting, but with that being said, that is unfortunately all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solar, Lemon, Lozendika, Nikas, Nanhatan, Star72, The Awesome Rabbit, Best for Gaming, Grabmo Flavia, Lebarule, W Haste, Sov, Anthony35, AC Napo, Conspiracy Pizza, Yukato, Danre, Marby, Jack, Ryland, Stuart Allen, Andrew Black, Nebula, Zentronic, Toynet, and Aquabird.